Hello and welcome back to the Crimisphere, where we discuss crime and criminal behavior. We have a lot of new subscribers, so let me take a moment to welcome you guys to the Crimisphere. I've been reading your comments and responding to some of them. Whether or not we agree or disagree on the last video, I still thank you and have kept the welcome mat out for you. If you want to support the channel and enjoy this type of content, the best way to support is to like the video and subscribe. Many thanks to returning subscribers. I appreciate you all, and for those who are new, I hope you enjoy the video and will consider subscribing. Now let's get started. When I think of the South, fond memories and thoughts come to mind. In my mind, I hear Lee Williams and the Spiritual QCs singing "I've Learned to Lean" or "Pass Me Not" by Al Green. Strangers constantly calling me hun, or sitting by a bonfire because the smoke keeps the skeeters away. Between the best sweet tea or fish fries, I don't know which is better. It definitely makes me think of family, but for one family, the holidays and birthdays will never be the same. Today's video takes us to Ridgeland, Mississippi. Ridgeland is a small suburban town in Jackson, Mississippi. On Sunday, May 12th, 2024, which was Mother's Day, concerned relatives requested a wellness check at a home in the 7100 block of Old Canton Road. The day before, the family planned to meet for a barbecue. After several calls to family members, they were unable to reach them. Around 3 p.m., Ridgeland police officers arrived at the home where they forced entry. The bodies of Ida Thomas Welch, 76, VICKY RENEE Welch, 56, and Crystal Lynn Welch, 42, were found. All three were deceased with apparent gunshot wounds to the head, leaving us with the question, who shot Ida, VICKY, and Crystal? Kim Welch, the sole surviving sibling of Crystal Welch, said, "Crystal was the youngest in the family, yet she was the head of the family. When describing Crystal, many said she was intelligent, compassionate, and consistent. She worked as an associate professor at Mississippi College School of Law, located in downtown Jackson, and served as the board president of the ACLU of Mississippi." I had to refresh my memory on that acronym, but the ACLU is the American Civil Liberties Union. The ACLU works to defend and preserve the rights and liberties of all people in the United States, as guaranteed by the Constitution. We learned that amongst Crystal's many accomplishments, one that stood out above the rest was that she helped to get the Mississippi state flag changed. On January 11th, was adopted to replace the former 126-year-old Confederate-themed flag. The former flag was antiquated and a divisive reminder of America's past transgressions against African Americans during the days of chattel slavery and unchecked white supremacy. A multitude of things converged for this change in flag to occur, such as George Floyd's death, calls from Black Mississippians, and national conversations about the need for racial justice. In addition, many were grateful for Crystal's contributions and commitment to helping families and children in adoption cases. If you haven't noticed, she was clearly a huge fan of the Hello Kitty brand. It sounds like Crystal Welch was a shining star in her family and community. During a tribute to VICKY RENEE Welch, a cousin helped us understand what the world lost when VICKY passed. In her youth, VICKY worked as activities directors at several daycare centers, drawn to the work because of her love of children. We learned that VICKY worked several service jobs as well until she began caring for her niece while her sister launched her career. She went on to lend her assistance to her parents when they experienced health issues as they aged. After their father passed in May of 2015, VICKY dedicated her life to caring for her mother. While I was unable to learn a lot about Ida Thomas Welch, I can conclude that she was the wife of IVORY James Welch Jr. She was the mother of 5 children Kim, Vicky, Ivory, Chris, and Crystal. Ida was also a member of New Mount Zion Church and was loved by her children, family, and community. One thing is abundantly clear about these strangers to me. They did not deserve such a dreadful end. Let's take a look at what the only surviving sibling had to say.
Wishers and mourners have been dropping by West Haven Funeral Home all day to pay their final respects as we are hearing from the last surviving sibling of the Welch family.
The only one. They have all left. Nobody's here. And I miss them. And God give me strength every single day.
The tragedy unfolded on Mother's Day after police found 42-year-old Crystal Welch, her sister 56-year-old Vicky Welch, along with their 76-year-old mother Ida Thomas Welch, shot to death inside the elder Welch's Ridgeland home.
And they're my best friends and they're gone from me. And Krista was just the head of our family. Even though she was the youngest, she was the head of the family.
Crystal was board president of the ACLU of Mississippi, plus an attorney who taught at Mississippi College School of Law. Friends have praised Crystal's work placing kids in foster care.
She didn't have any kids at all, but I admire her for loving other people's kids so great from the bottom of her heart. There was her compassion.
Police identified Ivory Welch III as the gunman in the deadly shooting. That's Ida's son and brother of Crystal and Vicky. He was killed days later in a shootout with state troopers in Arizona while on the run. According to Kim Welch, her family did everything they could to get help for her brother as he struggled with drug addiction and mental health problems.
No one ever imagined he would have done this. No one ever. Nothing. Because he was not supposed to have had guns. So nobody would never imagine he would have took a gun to do anything.
Kim Welch says she will fight to keep alive the legacy of her lost loved ones, that is, caring for God and caring deeply for others in need. Reporting from Jackson, Ross Adams, 16 WAPT News.
According to Ridgeland Police Department Chief Brian Myers, Ivory James Welch III, 54, lived in the home with his mother, Ida Thomas Welch. Ivory was immediately the prime suspect. He was allegedly seen leaving the house. We learned from Chief Myers, Ivory was reportedly upset about a funeral and his birthday, which was that Friday before these tragic events. Surviving family members said they did everything in their power to help Ivory, who struggled with drug addiction and mental illness. They never imagined Ivory would have possession of a gun, as he was not allowed to have one. Chief Myers told reporters Welch had an extensive criminal history, which included domestic assault and simple assault dating back as far as 2006. To make matters worse, one of those assaults were against another family member. Police believe the 3 victims were unalived on Saturday, May 12th, which means Welch was on the lam, with a head start and likely attempting to evade arrest. Ridgeland Police requested the assistance of the U.S. Marshals Fugitive Task Force. Marshals were then able to track Welch's cell phone to Dallas, Texas. At around 7:30 a.m. on Monday, May 13, 2024, Arizona Department of Public Safety was alerted of a possible sighting of a man matching Welch's description in the Safford area. Detectives and deputies worked together to find the suspect. By 10:17 a.m., detectives from the Arizona Department of Public Safety and police from nearby Greenlee County Sheriff's Office and Clifton Police Department geolocated Welch's car on US 191 between Morenci, I don't know which pronunciation is correct, and Clifton. Authorities stopped Welch, and after doing so, he got out of the car with the gun. It may be important to note here that in some articles, they reported the event that followed as a gunfight or shootout, which sounds like bullets were going back and forth between the suspect and police. However, another article said Welch exited the car with the gun, prompting police to shoot and unalive him. Ultimately, Ivory James Welch III was shot and killed in Arizona. In an article by WJTV reporter Tia McKenzie, Ridgeland Police Chief Brian Myers said, "Don't really know the motive. There's some mental illness background with Mr. Welch. That's all I've learned so far. This will be a long investigation. We will continue to investigate this. The Arizona Department of Public Safety has been very helpful. They have been doing a lot of the investigation out there since they have the car. They have this body, and they also have a weapon."
Police say that the suspect in Sunday's triple homicide has died after a gunfight in Arizona. It happened at a home on Old Canton Road. Investigators received the call right around 3:30 Sunday afternoon to conduct a welfare check there. They found the remains of 3 people with gunshot wounds.
Ridgeland Police Chief Brian Myers says investigators named Ivory James Welch III as the suspect. He was the son of one of the victims. An arrest warrant was issued for him, and the U.S. Marshals Fugitive Task Force began searching for Welch.
Chief Myers tells 12 News that Welch managed to get to Arizona before he was located by Arizona State Troopers. He says that they attempted to apprehend Welch, and he fired upon them. Troopers fired back and fatally wounded Welch.
Police have identified the 3 victims as Welch's mother, 76-year-old Ida Thomas Welch, 56-year-old VICKY RENEE Welch, and 42-year-old Crystal LYNN Welch. Crystal Welch was an associate clinical professor at the Mississippi College School of Law. 12 News' Tia McKenzie reports on reaction to Professor Welch's death.
42-year-old Crystal Welch was an attorney, Mississippi College law professor, president of the ACLU of Mississippi, and a member of several organizations.
This is a huge loss for the city of Jackson, for the state of Mississippi, for MC Law School.
Community members expressed their heartfelt condolences to the Welch family and friends following the tragic news of her death. Jacoby Grant graduated from MC Law School in 2016.
And one of the things that she always taught us was when you're considering the best interest of the child, you always have to have some compassion. And that's the one thing, if anything, we can say about her, that she was truly compassionate about advocating to better the lives of youth and disadvantaged youth all around her.
Welch was a member of Women for Progress Mississippi for over 10 years.
When we think about the work that she did around adoptive parents and children, that's statewide. And when you asked me about the impact, her impact and her work, just think about the lives that she will no longer have an opportunity to impact in our future.
MC School of Law released a statement saying, in part, quote, "It is with profound sadness that the Mississippi College and School of Law family mourn the passing of Crystal Welch, associate clinical professor. The thoughts and prayers of our leadership, faculty, staff, and students are with Crystal's family in this difficult time."
It's a tragedy, and it don't really know the circumstances, but it just goes back to gun violence. If you can look at anything, it's one of those things where we talk about access to guns and who has them. It becomes real important. The Second Amendment matters, but safety is important too.
Reporting in Ridgeland, Tia McKenzie, 12 News.
Let's move to the part of the video where I share my commentary, conspiracy theories, and thoughts on this case. I want to start with my most pressing question. What made that man take out his mother and 2 sisters? Was everyone at the house for Mother's Day? Who all lived in that house? Was there some kind of family meeting, intervention, confrontation? I wonder if they finally told him he's too damn old to still be living with his mama. I can't help wondering if he bullied and abused Miss Ida. Senior abuse and intimidation are a real issue. And why was Kim not there? I mean, I'm glad she wasn't there, because I'm sure she would not be alive today if she was there with her mother and sisters. Chief Myers said that Ivory lived with his mother, which is a major red flag all by itself. Ivory was 54 years old. We heard from Kim Welch. He was struggling with drug addiction and mental illness. I know, not all addicts or people with mental health challenges are dangerous, but some are. Let's keep it a buck. I am aware that many people self-medicate mental health problems with illicit street drugs, but I want to be consistent. The time to get help for that was before he commenced to go on a demon-driven shooting spree on his own family. I cannot imagine what could have possibly occurred that motivated him to do this. The only clues provided is he was upset about a funeral and his birthday, which would have been only the day before he unalived the ladies. So that sparked almost immediate retaliation. I mean, who could have possibly saw that coming? He's not a child, y'all. What was he expecting for turning 54? Cake, flowers, a car wrapped with a red bow? Somebody stomp the floor and wake up Ivory. Ivory, now you know Miss Ida and Mr. Welch didn't raise you to be that way. Now throw the gas on him, y'all. Since Ivory stopped his family from attending a barbecue, may the Lord of Justice make barbecue of you, sir. This whole story does not make sense to me. Don't you hate it when you read something that causes the wheels to spin in your head, looking for some normal or reasonable explanation that you know you will never find? A triple homicide in one family is evil work and a vile thing to do to women, your mom and sisters, no less. Those are the people he was supposed to protect. It boggles the mind. When I was doing public record searches, trying to find that funeral in question, I found a WAPT news article by Kara Peters about a devastating loss the Welch family suffered back on July 20th, 2021. It says, a man was unalived early Tuesday in a single vehicle crash in Jackson. The wreck was reportedly about 3:30 a.m. on Interstate 220 at the Hanging Moss Road exit, police said. Christopher Welch, 42, was driving a gold Jaguar that went off the road and overturned several times, according to Jackson police. Welch was ejected from the vehicle and was found in the left southbound lane of the interstate, police said. He was pronounced dead at the scene. He was not wearing a seatbelt and alcohol could possibly have been a factor, according to Jackson Police Department Public Information Officer Sam Brown. The cause of the crash is under investigation, police said. It made me wonder if his funeral was the reason for the anger or if there was another one. Ultimately, even if we knew his reasons, like if we heard it straight from Welch himself, I doubt that any reasonable person would, after hearing him out, been like, oh, okay, now I get it. Nope. There's no good reason for this kind of violence against your own family. He was a dead man walking, and I guess he wasn't willing to just go by himself. He had to drag half, no, the majority of his family out with him. And that's crazy work. Crazy work on another level. Nope. That's crazy to another dimension, a dimension that I have no interest in knowing. Here I go again. Is it possible for Ivory to be fuming over this for years? I mean, he passed away back in 2021. Yes, this was his little brother, but it seems like a long time to wait to do something. And how do we make sense of it along with his birthday? I have heard of relatives fighting over inheritances, property, real estate, a will, a trust, or even bills. But a birthday and a funeral? This is like a riddle. With this triple homicide being an act of violence inside of a single family, we may never know. I mean, as outsiders, we may never know exactly what he was so pissed about. I told you guys in other videos, my brain is a little overactive. So why did I find myself wondering which one was shot first or last? I doubt that police could ever determine that, but I feel a particular sadness and empathy for the one that had to witness the violence and gore of what was coming to them after seeing it happen to the others. The bodies were allegedly found in the living room, which may indicate they were ambushed or in shock, unable to do anything to stop or run from what would also be their fate. Imagine the disbelief in seeing your sibling do this to your mother or sister, or if the poor mother helplessly watched him do this to her girls. I keep saying, these kinds of events are the things nightmares are made of. And what's going to happen with Ivory James Welch's the third? What's going to happen to his body? It's most likely on ice in Arizona because it's evidence in this crime. Will they ship the body back to the surviving Welch sister for burial? What happens in these kinds of situations? I have no idea. Personally, I would tell them to keep it. I think the state will cremate an unclaimed body. I don't know. If I would have it in me to go through the trouble of gathering funds to bury someone that did such a cruel and unusual thing in my family, and if I did make sure he got buried, I certainly would not have a funeral for him. He would just be put in the ground and that's it. There is a level of cruel and depraved thinking involved in this triple homicide, and tells me that depravity took refuge inside of an open vessel called Ivory James Welch III. I know a lot of you will not believe me and will reject this, but reflect on it before you refute me in the comments. I am convinced that being under the influence opens a person to some dark powers. We hear about it all the time in documentaries where people will tell us how a voice told them to do this or that, and before you know it, they're standing there bloody and wondering what took over them. We have seen it in news stories everywhere. It's not worth it. Getting high or intoxicated, it's really not worth it. I remember when I learned why some called alcohol spirits. You can take that or leave it. That's the conspiracy part of the video. It sounds like the surviving sibling had a GoFundMe at one point to help with such unexpected funeral expenses and legal fees. I hope they had their affairs in order, because I can only imagine how stressful this would be. I saw the Tesla in the driveway and 2 other vehicles and thought of the many tasks Kim Welch will have to take care of by herself. I think they have referrals to companies that clean up behind crime scenes, but what happens to the family home? Do you rent it out, sell it, keep it? It will be heartbreaking going to pack up and clean out Crystal's home and possibly the home of the other sister. Like I said earlier, I don't know if both Ivory and Vicky lived with the mother, but police said Ivory did. So I assume Vicky and Crystal had their own homes. These are the types of things that don't readily come to mind when we read articles about these kinds of crimes, but seeing her shaking and crying made me sympathize that such terrible tasks have been laid in her lap. There's a huge burden placed on survivors. But moving along, I appreciate how Kim was open and honest in saying Ivory had problems, serious problems, but it sounds like no one could have ever imagined he would get his hands on a gun. But I am speaking from the outside when I say to those of you listening, let that be a lesson for all of us. If we find ourselves in a situation with a family member that is prone to violence and under the influence of drugs, please remember the Welch family and act accordingly. Protect yourself and protect those you love. Some families are off in the deep end of the pool, and trying to save them may cause you to suffer the same fate. Trust me, I was brought up by a Southern mother who taught us to always stick together, and family is all we have. I know that came from a loving place. However, just make a mental note that there are exceptions and conditions may change. That motto for a family has variables that should be considered, like whether that person has a desire to change. Would helping be toxic to your health or well-being? Am I being an enabler? And most important, is that person dangerous? Ivory James Welch III sounds like a man that failed to launch. These types are habitually angry, blames everyone else, and have taken residence in that sunken place. You mix all of that with testosterone, mental illness, drugs, and a society that makes guns too readily available, it too often ends with deadly outcomes. And fellas, real men, this does not apply to you, so don't get triggered. In later videos, I will be featuring women who are criminals and will drag them through the YouTube streets in the name of equality and hashtag me too. So personally, I wish Miss Ida had strong boundaries and never allow Ivory Part 3 to remain in her home after he attacked some unknown other family member back in 2006 and 2012. Look at this call log given to the press by police. Ridgeland PD was familiar with that house. So while I am glad Ivory Welch III has been banished from Earth like the villain he was, I do have my concerns with how it happened. If you unalive 3 family members, it is an unspoken rule that this kind of move is a public announcement of open hunting season for police. They're not looking to take you to jail, especially if you're Black. They're not overly interested in you having your day in court or granting you due process. Let me be clear. Bug Ivory James Welch III. And I know I was not there, so take this with a grain of salt or a grain of conspiracy. And I am not a defund the police type, not at all. So don't come for me in the comments. I am merely a supporter of good policing. Do you think I would ever trust you guys without the law? I mean, come on. Just kidding, kind of. The only ones that know for sure until we see body camera evidence on US 191, which, by the way, I want to see Arizona PD. We need transparency, even for these types of horrible situations. I know that most people could care less about what happened to Ivory Welch III after what he did to his family, but I do. And I also understand that many of these homicidal types are cowards. And when faced with accountability and prison, they opt to throw down their toys and stomp off the playground, which is my YouTube-friendly way of referring to the act of a person purposefully making police end their lives. I am fully aware that the police have it hard out there, and I do not envy them for the terrible things they see and face on a daily basis. If I had to complete an employee survey, it's given a 1 out of 5 stars. Would not recommend. I'll pass on that. I could never do that job, but it stood out when the reporter said his final destination, which was a rather cheeky reference to the horror movie by that title. Comment below if you've seen that movie.
Learning more details from investigators about the victims in this case and more details.
Yeah, it's a wild story and a tragic one at that. Mississippi police didn't know the suspect's planned final destination, but say the U.S. Marshals were tracking his phone. They thought he was maybe heading to Mexico until this unexpectedly ended in a shootout here in Arizona. We've now learned more about the family dynamics and what police knew about the suspect's past.
A mother and 2 daughters believed to be dead at the hands of their son and brother, Ivory James Welch III, a tragedy playing out during Mother's Day in Mississippi and ending Monday morning in the Arizona desert. Police identifying the victims as Ida Welch and her children, Vicky and Crystal Welch. Crystal, a well-known attorney who taught at the Mississippi College School of Law and was on the board of the ACLU.
Crystal was just a true delight. She was just a superwoman. She was a fun-loving, intellectual, very passionate about her work.
Ridgeland, Mississippi Police Chief Brian Myers says this all began as a welfare check when family members of the Welches could not get a hold of Ida and her kids.
They had a barbecue party of some sort planned for Saturday afternoon, and they didn't show up for that. They made several calls. No one answered.
Eventually, police forced their way into the home Sunday and found the unthinkable. Ida, Crystal, and Vicky dead in the living room, all 3 shot in the head. Authorities quickly gathered information and identified Ivory Welch as their suspect, getting 3 warrants for murder.
His vehicle was seen leaving the scene, and we tracked it all the way through to Dallas and understood it was obvious that he was on the run.
The U.S. Marshals were tracking him, and Monday morning, Arizona DPS says they pulled over the suspect in eastern Arizona on U.S. Route 191 near Clifton and Morenci for a traffic stop. They say he got out of the car with a gun, and that's when an officer-involved shootout unfolded with troopers. DPS confirming Ivory Welch was killed. Tonight, the Mississippi police chief revealing Welch's checkered past. He says they had contact with Welch in 2006 for domestic violence against another family member, and again in 2012 for assault. As for the triple homicide, they're still investigating motive, but have some working leads.
He may have been upset about a funeral and his birthday, which was on Friday.
Though Welch is now dead, both the Ridgeland Police Department and community still reeling from an unfathomable crime that took away an entire family in one day.
All of these tend to take a toll on the investigators who have to see that.
We lost 3 lives. These are generations, 2 generations of family. This is a sad situation.
Police say they know Welch lived with his mom, Ida, but don't know the nature of their relationship prior to this. The police chief says they're working to get the gun he had during the shootout in Arizona back to Mississippi to test and see if it was the same weapon he allegedly used to kill his family.
We need them to release the video and provide closure and a sound mind that the Carfax checks out on how Welch met his end. After that incident with Sonia Massey, RIP, And that pot of boiling water, we need the video of this alleged gunfight or shootout or whatever it was. After all, I am a due process girly. But I hope Kim is surrounded by love and support. She's going to need all that she can get. What this woman had happen in her family is unnatural and surreal. And how do you find closure when you're only left to bury your loved ones and one that is the... Look at the screen, y'all. This is a boulder of a burden. May God grant Miss Kim ease for her suffering and comfort for the void I am sure she feels having lost the ladies she described as her best friends. May the memory of these three ladies be like supernovas that create an explosion of light, compassion, love, and mercy in our communities. God knows we need it. Help her, Lord. Amen. As I often say, I see no point in pulling up these painful events from the ashes of the past if it does not serve a greater purpose today and usher in better understanding of how interconnected we all are through our actions, inactions, institutions, policies, and civic duties. After all, we are one human family. If you made it to this point in the video, you should stay and check out our comments cafe. Lord knows how long these women have been suffering in silence. He obviously was a deadbeat who chose to blame the females in the family for him not being as successful. Individuals like him are more common than you think. That's why a male needs to be trained to have a purpose in life early on. Or, like in this case, he was consumed with jealousy and hate. I'm at a loss for words. I miss Mother every day, and he thoughtlessly took his mother's life. He'll have to pay in afterlife for what he did. The question is, why murder your mother and sisters? If don't like the situation, move and leave them alone. This is horrible, killing a whole family. This is the sad outcome of bringing up good-for-nothing sons. Imagine making a simple traffic stop only to discover the driver had just killed 3 people. Scary. So he went psycho because a funeral was taking place on his birthday? Or Mother's Day, no less? Evil truly exists. Condolences to the family. Rest in peace. How did he not get rid of his phone? What an idiot. How could anyone do something so evil? His own family, his own sister, and his mother? That's just unbelievable to me. What is wrong with some people? I just don't understand why people would want to do something so evil and vile. I wonder, do they really think that they could get away with taking a life? Not just one person's life, but 3? And the victims was his own family? Unreal. Insanity. He's in hell now. But mental health issues still aren't a priority? Demon. Ends of time. The news just keeps getting darker. Probably wanted money for drugs. I don't believe he did this. They need to investigate the Mississippi ACLU. If no witnesses was there when this happened, how do they know the brother did this? Y'all believe anything. He did, then fled, then had a shootout with the cops when they found him. Are you okay? So sad. So they said. But I don't believe everything told to me like you. Sorry. Are you okay?
My name is Kathleen Stewart. I've been knowing Vicky ever since elementary. We will always be together. People even started calling us fat and skinny, but it didn't bother us. It didn't bother us. The only thing that we didn't get to do was to learn how to live without the other. Rest in peace, Vicky. Love always.